sincerely those of Love 101 FM.
Hello and welcome to the Morning Watch on Love 101 FM. I'm your host, Stokeley Marshall, and of course, we are the #1 gospel station in Jamaica. A special welcome to our listeners on love101.org, and if you are overseas and on the move, U.S. listeners can access us at 712-832-8001. And if you are in the UK, 0330-332-6541, or join us via the Love 101 FM app that can be downloaded from the Google Play Store or the Apple Store. You can also check us out on Love 101 FM Facebook Live and YouTube Live. In the main watch today, the rolling out of NIDS ID cards soon, issues and implications. In the second watch, reports on the treatment of Africans who are trying to leave Ukraine. In our social media question, we ask, what are your thoughts on the Russia-Ukraine war? Share your responses in our Facebook or YouTube, Love 101 FM Jamaica Live, and also WhatsApp comments and voice notes too. 876-997-3125 using the hashtag The Morning Watch. We'll share your comments later on in the program, but first, here's our quote.
All right, for every minute you are angry, you lose 60 pounds of happiness. I really hope that's the right one. Yes, it is. Yes, it is indeed. All right, so for every minute you are angry, you lose 60 seconds of happiness. Ralph Waldo Emerson. Good morning, sir. Stokeley.
Morning, Rushine. 60 seconds of happiness is a lot to lose,
That's right. That's right. So how has your last 60 seconds been for you? I know you're excited to share this morning.
Indeed I am. And in fact, the last 60 seconds I've been smiling, notwithstanding.
Okay, nice. I like that. We have to smile amidst all that's happening around us.
Indeed. Thank you, sir. The main watch will be back after this break.
You know how Jamaican people do everything extra, right? So why should planning your retirement be any different? Introducing JNGI Silver Shield, 2-in-1 coverage for motor vehicle and home including contents. See? Extra! Imagine 25% JN member discount, emergency roadside assistance, accident forgiveness up to $1 million and more. JNGI Silver Shield, exclusively for members of the Caribbean community of retired persons. Visit jngi.com. JNGI will help you find a way. A member of the JN Group.
The following is a message from the Ministry of Tourism.
Without a doubt, tourism is Jamaica's #1 industry, and our dedicated workers are its greatest asset. Jamaica would not be the heartbeat of the world without you. As the industry rebounds from the impact of COVID-19 pandemic, we truly need all hands on deck, yours included. Vaccination holds the hope for tourism's full recovery. In addition to COVID-19 protocols, it is the only comprehensive way to fight the pandemic and save lives. I am therefore urging every worker in the tourism and hospitality industry, in all the subsectors, including accommodation, attraction, entertainment, transportation, and craft, to do your part and get vaccinated. Do it for yourself, your family, your workplace, and your community. Do it for Jamaica, land we love. Stay safe. Get vaccinated.
The preceding message was brought to you by the Ministry of Tourism.
We I did a crazy attack. You see me is a real G, real go-getter. My life move non-stop. So me have to stay link and floor yard and road. And my connect. And one plan link me up at home with Wi-Fi and on my mobile. With data and calls to any network. At my yard, non-stop streaming my vibes. I studying from a picnic them and out the road. And non-stop vibes, same way. Flow connect me non-stop for as little as $3,999 a month. Plus GCT, I forget it. Visit discoverflow.co. Conditions apply.
All right, Stokeley, open your mic and speak.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. I'm Stokeley Marshall. The National Identification and Registration Act, NIDS pilot, is to be launched in August this year. And this after 2 years of reviews and tweaking. But are there still some issues, and will there be any implications? We have online this morning to discuss this Minister without portfolio in the Office of the Prime Minister, Floyd Green, and UIC President, Joseph Patterson. Good day, Mr. Patterson, and good day, Mr. Green. How are you both?
Good morning, Mr. Marshall. I'm doing fine, thank you. How are you?
I am well.
Morning, sir. Marshall, morning, Joseph, morning to all your listeners.
Morning, Mr. Green.
Jumping right into it, gentlemen, moving right into it. Now, I note, Mr. Green, that you, in your capacity as Minister without portfolio in the Office of the Prime Minister, appear to have oversight of NIDS in relation to the kicking off, as this article here uses, the kicking off of NIDS expected in the second half of this year. And I'm looking at an article here from the Jamaica Observer, and it's dated Tuesday, March 1, 2022, where you are actually in a photograph here, Mr. Green, next to the Minister of Finance, Dr. Nigel Clark, when you were addressing the meeting of the Standing Finance Committee of the House of Representatives of Gordon House. Now, Minister Green, assist us. Tell us exactly what is your portfolio responsibility concerning NIDS, and tell us about the pilot expected this year in relation to the ID cards.
All right, thanks for that question, Stokely. So yes, the Prime Minister has asked me to provide oversight for the National Identification System. It's one of my responsibilities now under the Office of the Prime Minister. As you may know, the National Identification System is a project that falls under the Office of the Prime Minister that we have been at for the better part of almost 5 decades. From the 1970s, we have recognized the need for us to have a way to be able to identify the members of our society so that we can more accurately plan and more efficiently provide various services to those members. So out of that was born the concept of having a national identification system and a national identification card. And as such, when the Labour Party became government in 2016, picking up on some work that has been done before, they started to move towards implementing that national identification system. Fast forward to November 2021, and our National Identification and Registration Act was passed in both houses of Parliament after a joint select committee that had submissions from various members of the public, and that now gives us a legislative framework for us to have a national identification system. So when the Prime Minister appointed me in January, he asked that I oversee the implementation of that national identification system as a part of a larger drive for digital transformation. So I am focused on digital transformation. I am focused on Registrar's General Department and on the social partnership, but I would say one of my main goals, the national identification system. So the part of the plan is to move to have a second half of this year where people will actually get an opportunity to come in and enroll for their national identification card.
Come in where exactly? Come in where?
Yes. So we decided to start with a pilot in Kingston and St. Andrew, and we will have minimum about 5 enrollment sites across Kingston and St. Andrew. And what we're doing in the pilot is clearly the national identification system will require an enrollment process, right? It is a voluntary program, so people can elect to be a part of the national identification system. And once they so elect, then they will go to an enrollment site where they will provide a number of the foundation documents, things like your birth certificate, and they will provide those documents to enrollment officers. Those documents will be taken, and then verification checks will be done, and they will be advised in relation to when they will get their card, and a process will start. So we decided the plan is to go island-wide, but we always think it's the best approach is firstly to start with a small sample size to be able to literally walk people through the process, see how efficient the process is, if there's anything that you need to change, that you need to modify before going island-wide. So the plan is to start with a pilot in Kingston and St. Andrew across about 5 enrollment centers towards the second half of this year.
Now, I want to bring in Mr. Patterson, but before we do that, explain the connection with the Electoral Office of Jamaica, because the article reads, Green added that the Office of the Prime Minister, under which NIDS falls, will also be partnering with the Registrar General of the Department. I can see that quite easily. And the Electoral Office of Jamaica to assist with the full rollout of ID cards. How will the EOJ be assisting with the full rollout of ID cards?
Yeah, so there are two in two instances. One, firstly, in terms of when we go to full island-wide rollout, clearly we will be setting up enrollment centers, and we will be looking to partner with a broad base of agencies so as not to, one, have to reinvent the wheel in terms of locations, and two, to utilize existing resources so that it will, minimize the cost. So we will be looking to partner with entities like the Jamaica Post and Telecoms, or post offices. As you know, they have some of the best networks across the country in terms of their location. So we'll be looking to set up enrollment centers at some of those post offices. We will also be looking to partner with the RGD to again set up enrollment centers, and also with the Electoral Office of Jamaica in terms of to help with enrollment. But there is a broader role for the Electoral Office, and this is really, it falls to the Electoral Commission of Jamaica. I think one of the things that we have done well, Stokeley, over the last few years is set up an independent oversight of our electoral affairs in such a way that now Jamaica is considered to have one of the freest and fairest elections in the entire world. And that has come from where we used to be at a very bad place, but through reforms, through partnership, and through the oversight of the Electoral Commission of Jamaica, we've been able to do that. So one of the things that the law does, and this was very, very important to ensure that people have a sort of trust and confidence that there will be an independent oversight of what is happening in the National Identification Program, is that the Electoral Commission of Jamaica has been identified as the Identification Inspectorate. So what does that mean? Again, the Electoral Commission of Jamaica is an independent entity of Parliament. As you know, they are a commission of Parliament. They don't answer theoretically in relation to any government minister of that sort. And as such, they will ensure that our National Identification Authority is living up to the tenets that it promises. So one, in relation to the security of data. Two, in relation to the processes that need to be implemented to ensure that that data is secure, to ensure that that data cannot be accessed by unauthorized people. The ECJ will provide that oversight to do independent tests and verification and things of that nature, so that they can say to us as a country that the National Identification Registration Authority, which will manage the system, is living up to the standards which we set it by law.
We are now upon a break. Minister Green, I had wanted to bring in UIC President Joseph Patterson before the break, but we are upon a break. Stay with us, listeners. Mr. Patterson, we're going to come to you in a moment. Listeners, we'll be right back on the Morning Watch.
And delicious Lasco mackerel. Get hooked on the tastiest mackerel around. The time by Lasco mackerel is?
It is now 7:15 right here on the family station, Love 101.
Do you operate a business in the manufacturing or agro-processing industry? Sagicor Bank has a loan just for you. Sagicor Bank Manufacturing and Agro-Processing Loan. Borrow up to $50 million with up to 12 years to repay. Financing you can use to retool, expand, improve efficiencies, or gear up for export. Speak with a business banker today. Sagicor Bank Manufacturing and Agro-Processing Loan. Just another way Sagicor Bank is taking care of business. Conditions apply.
Digicel. Connect with Brata. Enjoy all your favorite apps and more on Jamaica's fastest network. Activate the Prime Brata bundle for as low as $175 by dialing *147 from your Digicel phone or in the My Digicel app. Connect! Alright, connect with Brata. Digicel Prime Brata. Data can't done.
I'm your host, Stokeley Marshall. Welcome again to the Morning Watch. I'm your host, Stokeley Marshall. We are in the main watch. We're having a conversation with Joseph Patterson, UIC President. And of course, for those listeners who may be a little bit unfamiliar with the acronym UIC, it represents United Independence Congress. And we also have online Floyd Green, Minister without portfolio in the Office of the Prime Minister. And we're looking at the topic, the rolling out of NIDS ID cards soon, issues and implications. And in the first watch, Minister Green outlined much of the background as it relates to what will be happening shortly, later on this year, for that matter, in terms of the issuing of NIDS ID cards and the role of various agencies. And we would like to have the comments now of UIC President Joseph Patterson. Mr. Patterson, you have heard Minister Green. He said a number of things. He mentioned privacy, or he indicated the security of the data. And he also indicated the various agencies that will be partnering to ensure the smooth flow and the smooth introduction of these ID cards to Jamaicans. We know that there was much furor in the past as it relates to the old act. It's now replaced with a new act. The system is voluntary under this new act. What are your thoughts? What do you see as some of the issues and implications that can arise?
Well, firstly, thank you very much for having me, and it's a pleasure to be on with Mr. Green. It's quite ironic that Mr. Green and I are on because, we were both charged with having violating the DRMA, which is, but we were both treated very differently by the system. So when you talk about having a smooth performing system under the government, one must be very concerned. It's not easy for us in Jamaica to be confident that a corrupt system of government is going to protect our privacy. It is also not easy for us in Jamaica to be comfortable that our data will be adequately protected. We have seen where our government is unable to manage various systems and sectors of our country, and have had a number of breaches. But let me say this, it is reasonable and it is right for us to have a national ID system. It's very important for us to have that because it's a necessary part of good governance. The question, though, is for us to ask ourselves, where is this particular ID card system coming from? Who is funding it? And what are their motives? And what does that mean for the Jamaican people? We have seen in the last 2 years how a government that is not constrained by the Constitution properly can violate the rights and freedoms of Jamaicans quite easily. And so we would be remiss to think that simply hearing the sweet talk and nice words of the government about a beautiful ID system should make us comfortable and confident. I'm very concerned that this NIDS card and the central bank digital currency that they're bringing in, together with what we've seen under the DRMA and the actions of the Prime Minister, means that the risks to Jamaicans of their rights and freedoms being taken away by virtue of these tools is very, very high. Just imagine if the Prime Minister had the luxury of having the NIDS cards in place and it was enforced on us in the way that he wanted to do in the initial stages. He tried to ram this through on the Jamaican people, and the courts had to stop him because he did not care that he was going to violate the rights of Jamaicans. And so the court stepped in, fortunately, and stopped him.
Stokeley, I try not to disturb my friend.
I'm going to ask you to hold that thought 1 second, Mr. Green. I'm going to bring you in shortly, Mr. Green. Hold the thought, Mr. Green.
Mr. Green, please be respectful. I respect you.
Mr. Patterson, can you finish your thought, Mr. Patterson, and then I'll bring in Mr. Green.
So look at the origin of NIDS, look at the funding of NIDS, look at what was attempted initially, what the initial intent of the government was. They were curtailed by the courts. Now, what will be the new approach? The new approach will be, it's voluntary, but then you're going to have employers and banks doing things to frustrate the Jamaican people so that what is voluntary becomes mandatory through the back door. The same way that they brought in the force injection through the back door of using employers, they will do the same thing of enforcing NIDS by using employers and banks and government agencies. So even
I'm going to ask you to hold 1 second, Mr. Patterson, not because I'm deliberately cutting you for the sake of doing so, but because of a time constraint. And I would like Mr. Green to respond to quite a number of things you said. I did not disturb you when you were speaking at all, Mr. Patterson. I listened carefully. You said a couple of things. You mentioned the funding for NIDS, and I think it's a matter of record that it was funded as a result of a loan facility from the IDB. Well, that's my information anyway. And before you come in, Mr. Green, you started out by indicating that you were treated differently from Mr. Green under the under the DRMA. And as far as I am aware, Mr. Green was not charged under the DRMA, but there are other issues that you might want to raise, Mr. Patterson. I'm not saying you don't have a point to make, but my information, I believe it's a matter of public record that Mr. Green was not charged. And in terms of a number of things you just said about whether the system would be voluntary, I think you're sort of going on the limb of speculation, not saying that it's invalid speculation, but it might be a matter of speculating to say that employers and banks, etc., will make NIDS de facto mandatory on the citizens of Jamaica. But Mr. Green, feel free to comment in a moment, and then I would like Mr. Patterson to continue his points. Mr. Green?
No, so Stokeley, I did not intervene initially, but, as this is your program, but, it cannot be that Mr. Patterson is allowed to peddle lies, falsehoods, and defamatory comments using this platform, right? I think I have no personal beef with Mr. Patterson. In fact, he hails from my parish in St. Elizabeth, our parish, but it cannot be that he can just say what he feels like when there is no factual basis. And I'm very concerned about that.
What specifically are you responding to concerning what he said?
You did highlight that he said something that was untrue in relation to regarding the DRMA. That was untrue. And then he has made a number of comments that would not border on opinion, right, in relation to how he has positioned his view almost as facts in relation to the Prime Minister trying to ram it down the throats and things of that nature. Now, let me say a couple of things. Mr. Patterson started from a position where he says he supports national identification. And then again, unfortunately, has become commonplace with his utterances. He then goes into baseless reasoning in relation to why he does not support it. So let me clear a couple of things. Again, it is a record of fact that as a country, we first spoke about having a national identification system since the 1970s. That was before I was born. But as soon as I came to a stage where I could kind of deduce and reason and look at management, I always wondered to ourselves, how do you plan for a country that you are really not properly able to identify its individuals? How do you distribute social services effectively and efficiently? I wondered, why do when I got an quote unquote identification card, when I had the voter's ID card, and I go to a bank, I'm told I need 2 pieces of identification, or why do I need to carry a JP letter to prove that I am who I say I am? Or additionally, why do I need to take a picture and have somebody sign the back of it saying that this is in fact me? And I recognize that all of those inefficient systems came about because we did not have a verifiable database of identity, and it has been holding back our country. And again, Mr. Patterson has lived in jurisdictions where they have set up unique identifiers that he, I would suppose, would have been the bearer of those unique identifiers that they have used to streamline their country. So one, I don't think one can speak about the need. Then you fly a kite about source of funding. You know, one of the biggest agricultural programs that we have in this country, called the READY program, is funded by a loan that the government has taken. Now remember, if I go to the bank, Stokeley, and I take a loan, although it is provided by, let us say, NCB, ultimately, it is my money with my doing. In other words, I could have taken a loan to do anything, right? Again, we have had so many things from highways to, let me finish, from highways.
Only because of time, Mr. Green, only because of time.
I understand, but just let me wrap it up. We have had so many things from highways to our Ready to Agricultural program to so many different things that we have all engaged with that have been funded using external sources, some by loan, some by grant, but at the end of the day, it is the country who decides. So this is not this is not some imperialistic drive. This is not something external. This is a country who has been about for 50 years, going into 60 years this year, who recognizes that it has not been efficiently functioning. And let us talk about the reality now. What is the reality now? One,
I'm going to ask you to hold that thought, Mr. I'll ask you to hold, Mr. Green, only because of time. We have literally a minute or two left, and I would like Mr. Patterson. Well, I would like to put something to you, Mr. Patterson. You did say something about the Prime Minister, which I really wondered about, but I didn't want to seem as if I was just cutting into what you were saying, because you did mention this matter of ramming things down people's throat, which I thought was wrong, but I didn't want to cut into what you were saying. What exactly did you mean when you said that, Mr. Patterson? And quickly, sir.
Since we only have a minute left, let me say this.
Yes.
Number one, the ECJ is not an independent body. Go and check the website, you can see it's stacked with partisan people. That's number one. Number two, the Privacy Act that Mr. Green has referred to is a copy from the Europeans and reflects the values and interests of some people who are a part of a mission called the Great Reset. So therefore, if
but what is the base? Hold on, what's the basis for saying that, Stokeley? What is the basis for saying that?
The Jamaican people
You can't just be made to say these things without being able to factually prove it, Stokeley. I think that's
one moment, Mr. Green.
No, but Stokeley, you understand what I'm saying?
1 second, Mr. Green.
Outside forces, which if we invest, we can see that.
Unfortunately, Mr. Patterson, I'm trying to be very respectful to both of you. I have to repeat that the views and opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily those of Love 101 FM and certainly not of me either. If I could add that for emphasis. Because you just said a couple of things, Mr. Patterson, that I'm not sure if they're really true. And we don't want to associate ourselves with things which we cannot prove factually, which we cannot establish factually. However, Mr. Patterson, not being disrespectful to you or to Mr. Green, what is your position? Are you in agreement with the rollout of the ID cards, yes or no? Mr. Patterson, are you in agreement with the rollout of ID cards? We're not hearing you, Mr. Patterson.
No, I'm not. I'm totally opposed. No.
You're opposed to it. And okay, fine. We have to leave it there today. And of course, Mr. Green, I'm assuming
he started by saying he doesn't have a problem. Remember,
I have noted that, Mr. Green. I have noted that. Yeah. We have noted that. Yes. So, yes. Mr. Green, any final word you want to leave with us?
You know, we have spent a lot of time dividing our country unnecessarily, oftentimes for political gain. I grew up in a household where daddy was PMP, mommy was JLP, and I did not grow up on division. I believe in this our 60th year. We cannot continue to divide the country just because we seek political
In a second or two, Mr. Green, I'm literally out of time.
I would say to everybody, let us look at the basis on which we proceed, and let us try to get a more efficient system.
I have to leave it there this morning. I want to thank both Mr. Green and Mr. Patterson for being with us in this morning watch. Very interesting segment. A lot of issues and implications, clearly. We'll be right back on the Morning Watch.
Now with no processing fees and no down payment, it's time to open the door to your own sweet home. The time by JN Bank is...
It is now 7:32 right here on the family station, Love 101.
We need some information about my NWC bill now.
Want to know how much water you used?
Yes, I want to know my usage up to at least 6 months.
Just log on to the NWC's customer web access portal at nwcjamaica.com and you can get account information up to 13 months. You can also get your payment history.
So I can access the IPA section for pay my bill too?
Yes, it's convenient. Click and connect with the NWC customer web access portal. Try now.
I did a crazy attack. You see me, me's a real G, real go-getter. My life moved non-stop. So me have to stay link and flow yard and road. And my connect and one plan link me up at home with Wi-Fi and on my mobile with data and calls to any network. At my yard, non-stop streaming my vibes. I studying from a pit to them and out the road. And non-stop vibes, same way. Flow connect me non-stop for as little as $3,999 a month plus GCT. I forget it. Visit discoverflow.co. Conditions apply.
From generation to generation, Jamaicans have depended on JN Bank to make the pride and joy of providing a safe place for their families possible. Now, with no processing fees and no down payment mortgage options, you can open the door to your own sweet home, a legacy to hand to your next generation. Visit jnbank.com to get pre-approved today. JN Bank will help you find a way.
Listeners to Love 101 FM are advised that the views and opinions expressed in this program are not necessarily those of Love 101 FM.
Hello and welcome back to the Morning Watch on Love 101 FM. I'm your host, Stokeley Marshall. Let's now take a look at the newspapers to see what Jamaicans and others are saying and doing. And we have here in the Jamaica Observer a very concerning story here. 11-year-old girl among 3 siblings shot dead in Irwin Heights. Very, very concerning story. We also have long lines as gas prices spike. And we also have here in the Observer, Malahoo Fort wants early approval of firearms bill. And we now turn to the Gleaner. FLA scandal, how Montague granted gun permits to 6 people with criminal traces. That's in the Gleaner. Another story in the Gleaner here, FLA scandal. Integrity Commission. Coming up next, we'll leave some of the feedback from our Facebook and WhatsApp question, which is, what are your thoughts on the Russia-Ukraine war? If you haven't done so yet, leave a comment in our Facebook or YouTube, Love 101 FM Jamaica Live, and also WhatsApp comments and voice notes to 876-997-3125 using the hashtag The Morning Watch. We'll be right back.
Under the Law helps you to know your rights and how the laws of Jamaica can help you defend those rights. We've been doing it for 50 years. That's right. Join us on Thursdays at 6:20 a.m., 2:35, 6:45, and 9:10 p.m. Compliments of the Jamaica Council for Persons with Disabilities. Educating, advocating, empowering. Under the Law, Thursdays on Love 101 FM.
I'm your host, Stokeley Marshall. Let's take a look at how our Facebook and WhatsApp friends answer today's question. What are your thoughts on the Russia-Ukraine war? Do we have any comments so far here? I'm looking in the chat. Anything yet, Roshane?
Yes, indeed. I'm seeing a long one on Facebook. I'm not sure if I can probably cite that one. I'm gonna read that one in a short while because it's long. But this one says, prophecy being fulfilled, no alarm there. Remember the wars and rumors of wars. We just need to be ready. Jesus is coming soon. Another one here says, good morning. I'm happy that it's not Jamaica and Russia at war, but I'm also sad for what is going on with them and Ukraine. It pains my heart to see people fleeing and dying and families separating because of envy, covetousness, and selfishness on the part of the Russian president. This war is affecting many countries, including us including us here in Jamaica. Let us continue to pray and look up for redemption drawing nigh. And also this person here on Facebook, Claudette Lambert. The recent declaration of war by Russia with the Ukraine is very sad. The Russian president has shown that he can't regard for international law and has allowed his selfish political desire to supersede the welfare of his people, the people of Ukraine, and as well as the rest of the world. This war will create a hardship globally, but it's the poor who will be the most disadvantaged. I hope the government will take the necessary steps to increase their country's agricultural output and find other alternatives. And this message continues. So go ahead, Stokeley.
Quite a mouthful, sir. Quite a mouthful. We move right into the second watch. The United Nations has reported that about 2 million people have fled Ukraine since the war started. How many of these persons are Africans? Well, according to some reports, Africans are having a hard time and have had a hard time leaving Ukraine because as the authorities push them to the ends of long lines, it is said, and even beat them, many Jamaicans have seen things on social media and even mainstream media showing accounts of Africans being poorly treated as they try to leave that country. And what is being said is that Ukrainians and others of a different race are being let through, but the Africans, the dark-skinned persons, being pushed away and put to the back of long lines, beaten. In 2022, we have online today to have a discussion around this. Pastor Everald Edwards, pastor of the Church of the Open Bible, Twickenham Park, and international affairs commentator, And we have Michael Diamond, president of the Consumers Intervention Jamaica. Good day, Mr. Diamond, and good day, Pastor Edwards. How are you both?
I'm well, thank you.
Good morning. Are you hearing me well?
Oh, we are hearing you both. We're hearing you both quite well. Now, some of the stories that I saw in relation to how Africans, mostly students, for instance, studying in Ukraine, have been treated or are still being treated in trying to leave Ukraine, it sort of opened a window, almost as if you're doing a little bit of time travel. Not that I believe in those things, but it felt like you're doing a bit of time travel as to how our ancestors were being treated during slavery and colonialism. Now, for instance, the BBC reports here, sirs and listeners, and this is a BBC report, 28th of February by Stephanie Hegarty. Ukraine conflict. Nigeria condemns treatment of Africans. I'll read a little bit of it. Nigeria's government has condemned reports that its citizens and those of other African countries have been stopped from leaving war-torn Ukraine. And there's a gentleman being quoted here, Isaac, a Nigerian man trying to get into Poland, said border staff told him they were, quote, not tending to Africans, unquote, full stop. Starting with you, Pastor, what are your thoughts?
Unjust, but again, not surprising. We know that darkness still abounds in some places, and we're not talking about darkness of skin hue. It's just ignorance and malice without foundation. So anywhere in this day and age, we find racism still being used as the guide to how we treat people. We can safely say somebody is being not just malicious, but ignorant too. Because no matter where we come from and the color of our skin, we're all human beings. And it speaks to the heart, the socialization of the perpetrator, that purely on the basis of somebody's color or ethnicity, that is what is going to determine how we treat them.
Mr. Diamond, you are a Jamaican. You have studied overseas in a country where persons of darker skin are in the minority. You have seen the reports as to how African students, for example, were being treated in Ukraine in them trying to leave the country. How does it strike you? Do you feel like it's being, it's like, here we go again? You thought that we were over these days? What are your comments and your thoughts, Mr. Diamond?
Well, again, good morning to you and the listeners. Yes, first impression can appear to be like, here we go again. Now, the reality is that we're not past this, and we are not going to be past this for a very long time, because it not only requires a shift in the mindset of those who continue to abuse us, but it also requires a shift in our mindset as well, and how we treat each other and how we collectively support each other in situations and crises. Now, one of the things that we have to remember is that the Ukraine, of course, former part of the Soviet Union, is that the way that blacks, and I use that very carefully, are treated in, let's say, here in the West, is quite different than how the Europeans treat blacks. And, you know, we can see that because we hear that there are a lot of Africans that happen to be going to school in Ukraine. Now, what was it like prior to this invasion? How were they being treated? Were they...
When you say treated differently in Europe, what exactly do you mean?
In the sense that a black person's definition in America is quite different than the black definition in Europe. Because in Europe, they look more at it, not that you're black because you're of African descent, but your tone is black. Whereas in America, once you're black, they're just saying that you're African descent. That's it, and the way they treat you discriminatively is quite different.
Is the
Now,
treatment in
racism,
is the treatment in Europe generally worse than the treatment in the US in your view?
absolutely not, because what happened in Europe as far as their slavery, their treatment of slaves, and the chattel slavery that exists in the Americas is far different, and it created a situation that is still very apparent today, to this very
Hold
day.
that thought,
Where
Mr. Diamond. Hold that thought, Mr. Diamond. I'm seeing where we are already upon a break. We'll be right back on the Morning Watch.
It's over 5 years we've been here. Time to review our options.
CIBC First Caribbean. Home ownership is a big deal, so move on merrily with CIBC First Caribbean. Switch your mortgage and you'll get half off the appraisal cost, commitment fee, and more. Enjoy up to US $10,000 toward your switching cost. A peaceful rest. Glad we moved to CIBC First Caribbean.
Merrily.
Terms and conditions apply. Visit CIBCFCIB.com/move merrily for details.
You work hard to make Jamaica a first-class destination. Isn't it time you receive the 5-star benefits? Retire smarter with the Tourism Workers Pension Scheme, a portable plan that also provides your family with financial security in case of your untimely death. It's easy, affordable, and accessible online. Retire and relax with the Tourism Workers Pension Scheme. Visit twps.myguardiangroup.com or call 876-927-4105. Guardian Life. Live secure. Live easy.
Connect with data to do whatever you like with the new and improved Digicel Prime Broader bundles. Get lots of data for streaming and sharing with more data for YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and more. In other words, your data can done, even if you have to hotspot a friend or two. Enjoy all your favorite apps on Jamaica's fastest network. Activate a Prime Broader bundle for as low as $175 by dialing *147 from your Digicel phone or in the My Digicel app. Digicel, made in Jamaica.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. I'm your host, Stokeley Marshall, and we are in the second watch. And we're looking at the treatment of Africans in the situation in Russia, Ukraine, the Russia-Ukraine war, and how the Africans in Ukraine have been treated with on them trying to leave that country. We have Pastor Everald Edwards. He's pastor of the Church of the Open Bible, Twickenham Park International Affairs commentator, and Michael Diamond, president of the Consumers Intervention Jamaica. Before the break, Mr. Diamond, you did indicate that Africans in Europe are not treated as unkindly as persons of African descent in the US. And you use the word or the term darker skinned when referring to Africans in Europe, because you say that's how Europeans view them. They just view them as darker skinned persons. Now, does it therefore shock you and surprise you that there are these reports of Africans complaining that in trying to escape Ukraine, they have been getting this really, really, really horrific treatment? Does that shock you in any way?
not necessarily, because xenophobia is a hell of a thing once you're facing a crisis, and then you'll find out exactly how that particular society really feels about you. Now, a key thing in the reports that we're hearing is that they're putting their people first. And it's not to say that we're in agreement with that, but situations can create certain type of madness in individuals. Because if there was such a crisis in Jamaica, granted, many of us would be putting our own people first rather than the foreigners. Now, does it mean it's right? Absolutely not. But we have to keep in mind that this situation is easier once they know there's not going to be much repercussion from the black countries or black communities, because we are not as unified as we should be. How dare you discriminate against us in such a manner, so wantonly, in a crisis? So we're hearing also that even though women and children were supposed to be placed, of course, as priority, yet still the blacks were not priority, regardless of women or children. So this is a situation that is not a here we go again, but is just a another reminder that we have yet to demonstrate the type of unity that would influence a psychological change in how they treat us.
You know, I once heard a comment from, well, I'll just tell you what he said. Someone once said to me that the reason why black people are so poorly treated in the world is because there is no black military country or black country with a significantly large military strength to act as a sort of that other countries will respect. I thought it was quite an interesting comment because I think many people across the world who are not Africans, they still have something somewhere in their consciousness where they think, yes, we respect you, but at a lower tier than we respect ourselves. Any comments on that, Pastor? Because you know, even in the Bible, you will see where there was discrimination, one group thinking they're better than the next group. Pastor?
Yeah, I have a difficulty with that though. The military might being the means by which you enjoy respect.
I'm not saying he's correct. But I always find it interesting because the fact is that there is really no country largely peopled by Africans who is known on the world stage as being a large military power. It's the United States, Russia, China, countries like that. But continue, Pastor.
I'm informed by the fact that regardless of skin color and location, we still have a heart issue as a race, as a people, as well, anywhere you find us. And you look at the conflicts which dominate news now, and 9 times out of 10, they have very, very clear signs that what we are talking about is not the fact that you're black or you're white. Many cases tell us is mistrust, is a lack of regard for your rights, or you're wanting to exert your rights at my expense. So what we have is a challenge having to do with the condition of each man's heart. We are obsessed with power and profit, and we want prestige. We want to be the best, the biggest, the baddest. Why? But how much will satisfy us? Some people are harping back on if you go back to the Soviet Union Ukraine conflict, people are harping back on what existed years ago and what they feel must be maintained forever. And some people want to forge an independence. Now, with that kind of mentality, if you are a Ukrainian, you might be inclined to say, well, since we are under assault, we have to look out for our people. That is our way of building community and assuring each other that you are not alone. We can't get...
Well, Pastor, I'm going to just ask you to pause there one moment, because every time I think about how people of another race or another group, whether religious or racial, etc., treat other people, I remember the story of the Good Samaritan in the Bible. And it was a Samaritan who came to the rescue, a Samaritan. How does that strike you now, Pastor, in relation to all of what we're seeing here?
Well, we know of the cases where you have obligation in war to treat the prisoners from the opponents who you capture with
Yes,
civility.
but Pastor, we're talking about persons fleeing a country. They're actually trying to get away from the war. They're not even taking part in the war. But hold that thought, Pastor. I want to read a little bit of this BBC article. The account of a university student from Nigeria. She was studying medicine in Kharkiv, in the east of the country, Ukraine, when the city was attacked. She walked for 11 hours overnight before she arrived at the Medica crossing with Poland.
Mhm.
She's now quoted here. When I came here, she's now being quoted. When I came here, there were Black people sleeping on the street, unquote, she told the BBC. Okay. She went on to say this. Well, it goes on to read. She says she was told by armed guards to wait as Ukrainians had to be let through first. She watched busloads of people whom she described as white being allowed through the border, while only a handful of Africans were selected from the queue. After waiting for many hours, she was finally allowed to cross and made her way to Warsaw to fly back to Nigeria.
Mhm.
That's just an account of one student. And there's an account of another student, for example, mentioned here in the article. And these are the kinds of scenes you're seeing. Now, Nigeria's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Nigeria's foreign minister said he had spoken with his Ukrainian counterpart and had been assured that Ukrainian bodyguards had been given an order to allow all foreigners leaving Ukraine to pass through without restrictions. We can only hope that those instructions and orders were obeyed.
Yeah.
And Nigeria's Ministry of Foreign Affairs has now advised its citizens leaving Ukraine to head for Hungary or Romania rather than trying to enter Poland. So even the officials of Nigeria have to be jumping in, sir, so to speak, to provide assistance to their own citizens in the country through the diplomatic channels.
Yeah, but
Continue,
again,
Pastor.
again, that's what governments do, eh? They look out for their citizens. Long before outside.
So you're not seeing it as a racial issue, Pastor.
Well, I tell you what, it has to be seen as such, but I go further and say, what is the motivation for that?
Hold that thought, Pastor, because we're almost out of time already. Mr. Diamond, any comments? Is it a racial issue, or is it simply looking out for your own people first?
I will definitely say it's a combination of both underlined with racism. Keeping in mind that when they consider the impact that Africans have had on the European continent is very significant, especially in Russia, where their father of mother and literature, as these been hailed, is of African descent. Now, one of the things we have to remember that in crisis,
no, Mr. Diamond, please repeat what you just said a while ago. I think it flew over many people's heads. Say it again.
It depends on which part we're referring to, but the who's hailed, right? The individual, Pushkin, Alexander Pushkin, who's hailed as the father of Russian literature, is of African descent, and he's from a lineage of so they know of the influence that Africans play on the European continent. Yet, just to quickly mention that Marcus Garvey saw
and the Moors of Northern Africa had once colonized sections of Europe. Many people don't know that. But continue, Mr. Diamond.
And the Moors, of course, are black. Now, what happened is that Marcus Garvey saw this happening, and his vision was to unite Africa, or unite blacks on the one flag, on the one nation, so that anywhere in the world a black person would be protected from these type of discrimination because we are united. Now, we don't have that. What we have are many different African countries who, of course, Northern, Central, and South are pretty much divided, not simply because they want to do that, but because of the influence of the colonizers. They have made sure that we are divided in such a way that we cannot unify, especially in crisis. we have a situation right now where a lot of black people are praying for the Ukrainians when the Ukrainians are not praying for the Ethiopians or the individuals in Sudan who are locked in conflicts, and hundreds are dying on a daily, weekly basis. So we give a lot more sympathy. Right.
Have to leave it
Real
there
quick,
this
if we give
morning,
sympathy
gentlemen.
to
I wish
them,
we had more time. I wish we
I
had more
certainly
time,
wish
but
we did.
we have to wrap it there today. More anon perhaps on this one, because it really needs to be further ventilated. I want to thank you for being with us, gentlemen. Thank you for your thoughts and thank you for your time. Visit the Love
Thank you
101
for
FM YouTube channel and Facebook page for this and other Love 101 FM programs. Download our Love 101 app and stay connected to us, the number one gospel station in Jamaica, number 4 on the island. This has been the Morning Watch. Join Reverend Dr. Dylan Toussaint next week as we look at other topical and controversial issues. Thanks to our producer, Kathy Gale, and to our guests. I am Stokeley Marshall, and you're back to Love in the Morning with Rashane. Keep safe.
Thank you, Stokeley. All the best to you now for the rest of the day. Make it the time 8 o'clock right here on the family station, Love 101. It's now time for the program for